Very early in my career as a psychiatrist, I gave up asking my patients about their New Year's resolutions, probably sooner than they give up on their resolutions. And this wasn't because I didn't want to hear what changes they wanted in their lives, and I know all of them wanted to make some changes. It was because the word resolution started to feel like a bad setup. Instead of inspiring hope, opportunity, it was just futility and fatigue came up for people. So today, I want to talk about why New Year's resolutions are so difficult to maintain for most of us, and how with a few small changes to how we approach them, we might be able to actually achieve sustainable and meaningful change in our lives and set ourselves up for a good new year. And for those of you who are new to the channel, welcome. I'm Dr. Robert. I'm a board-certified psychiatrist. And today we're focusing on how to make sustainable, meaningful changes in our lives. Because I'm sure many of us are very familiar with that initial motivation, optimism that follows the new year, and these changes we want to implement. And oftentimes we are able to implement them pretty successfully. But after a week, couple of weeks, a month, if you're lucky, 2 months, they start to fade away. Old habits come back. And then we feel frustrated. We feel like it's meaningless, frustrating to even start about making changes. So we kind of go back to our old habits, kind of feel bad about ourselves here and there, and hope for better in the new year. And so the cycle continues year after year. So let's talk about why we set ourselves up for failure with New Year's resolutions from the very start. And I would argue that's because we look at them as a binary, as something we either implement or take away. Think about it, right? For many people, it's stop eating junk food, stop eating so much sugar, stop smoking, stop drinking, or on the other hand, gaining things, right? So start going to the gym, start reading every day, start journaling, start getting back to your creative projects. And these are all kind of big changes, kind of shocks to the system that can oftentimes bring up novelty and actually a lot of benefit in the first few weeks that we are very easily able to acclimate to, implement, but then they wean away. That's because these resolutions on the very basic level add friction to our lives. And there's only so many times our brains can decide to go with the discomfort, postpone the pleasure, the comfort, to stick with our goals. And after a while, there'll be a point where you're tired enough, you're bored enough, you're frustrated enough that you're gonna say, yeah, forget it. I'm gonna do this thing. I'm gonna have the sugary treat, have the cigarette, have the drink, skip the gym, and then all of a sudden the pattern's broken. You feel defeated. You're frustrated with yourself again that you broke with the habits you were trying to implement, broke with the regimen, and you gain some comfort though, so that's not too bad, and you already kind of feel bad about yourself, so why not keep going? You can go back to your good habits a week from now, a couple weeks from now, after this holiday, after this party, whatever it is for you. And so those resolutions are lost for the year. Other times, people will try to double down with willpower, and that can work sometimes. But we're currently going back to willpower. It's not going to be a sustainable solution. I can guarantee you there's no one out there who's living a happy, fulfilled life who's having to reach for willpower every day. They're probably miserable if they have to do that. And that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for sustainable, meaningful change that makes you feel more fulfilled, feel like you're living your life more in line with your values. So how do we do that? Well, how we live more in line with our values is we figure out what they are. We learn the difference also, and this is very important, between behaviors and values. And behaviors are concrete, specific, and visible. And values, because they're more concepts than actions, can be a little bit harder for people to oftentimes conceptualize. I think a good way to think of values is kind of like a compass. They don't tell you exactly which route to take, the next step, but they guide you towards the right direction. So to better clarify this, let's take a common example of a New Year's resolution. Let's say I want to work out more. And on the surface, it sounds like a good resolution, right? Definitely a positive thing. But if you kind of dig down further, that's a behavior. I want to work out more. I want to go to the gym more. I want to run every day. All good, but not sustainable. So here, I like to zoom out, right? There's the behavior of I want to work out every day. I want to go to the gym every day. So let's zoom out for a moment and see what is that behavior guiding us towards? What's the direction we're moving towards? What's that value? And then someone might say something like, right, I want more energy. I want to feel more comfortable in my body. I want to just be healthier, create longevity because I want to meet my grandkids, or whatever else comes up. That's a positive thing that they want to instill in their life, but it's not necessarily a behavior, but an overarching goal that they care about because it adds meaning and well-being to their life. So now we've reframed this behavior goal of I want to work out more, I want to jog more, to I want to feel more healthy. I want to take more action in my life that is aligned with a healthy lifestyle. We have a value of health. Another common resolution for people is cutting something out, right? So I want to cut out nicotine, drink less, eat less sugar, spend less time on social media. So all these things we want to cut out. which are good because I'm sure doing that will improve your life. But again, that can be very difficult to sustain, and we're just looking at a behavior. So not reaching for your phone, not reaching for a third drink. So let's again look at that from a values perspective. Let's say drinking, for example. What are you looking to gain, right? Because you don't want to look at it from a perspective of what am I losing out on? I'm losing out on friends, time at bars with friends. I'm losing out on, feeling very happy at parties, more social. Instead, let's reframe it as to what are we gaining from removing this. So clearer mornings, better finances, better health, more reliable evenings. So it's no longer a loss, it's something we're gaining, and we can apply some values to it, right? So valuing your time, valuing your health, your finances, how you portray yourself and feel about yourself. So now let's dive into how to make these changes that we all want in our lives more meaningful, more long lasting. So step one, let's reframe how we think about our changes. Let's not think about it as something we take away or something we force into our lives, but what's something we can create more opportunity for. It's a direction we can move our lives toward, not away from. Some common examples can be you're not giving up on social media, you're gaining time with your family, gaining time with the old hobbies you used to enjoy. So step two, shrink the change you're looking for until it's almost laughably small. Because many of us start with these lofty goals, these huge ideas of the changes we want to implement. We can stick to them for the first few weeks and then they sort of teeter out. But if we start to build up towards our goals, we'll have a much better chance of starting to implement them, work with them, and find ways to make them more sustainable. So how about not going for the lofty goal, I'm going to read a chapter every night of a book? How about I'm just going to read a paragraph or just a page of a book every night? That starts to cue your mind that this is something I do. This is a part of who I am. I read every night. And even if you read one sentence every night, you're still technically a consistent reader. And once the pressure is gone for doing something big, like reading a full chapter, which might come with all these mental barriers of, today I don't feel like it, this came up at work, I already feel exhausted, I'll just reach for my phone. But if it's just, I'm just gonna read a sentence, that's a lot easier for our brains to start to tackle. And if you start implementing these small changes, I guarantee that you'll find, more often than not, you'll be surprised with how much you actually end up doing. Some nights maybe you'll just read a sentence and then be like, all right, I'm done. But if the opportunity is there every night, often you'll find yourself reading a full page, a few pages, maybe even a full chapter. And other nights you won't, and that's okay. But the idea is you're coming back to that behavior and it's becoming a part of your identity. Same with exercise, right? You don't want to have the goal of spending an hour in the gym every day. That might work for a while, but won't be consistent. But if you're someone that does something for your physical health every single day, then that becomes a part of your identity. It becomes a part of who you are. It becomes a much easier thing for your brain to default to in times of stress, boredom, as something that's meaningful, helpful, useful, rather than something that's a drag, something painful, a source of friction in your life. So even just walking around the block every day, doing some stretches, anything like that, that ingrains in your mind, in your repertoire of behaviors, and your toolbox of skills, as this is something I reach for every day. And I can start to build up on it. Some days will be better, some days will be worse, but I always consistently come back to it. And consistency beats out intensity every single time. And how you view these changes then starts to shift over time. It switches from I'm someone who tries and fails to I'm someone who shows up and tries, perhaps imperfectly, but I show up every time. And I try to come back to this every time, even imperfectly. So knock down that sense of I need to do this perfectly every time. I need to go all in every time or I don't do it at all. Learn to grow comfortable with imperfection, with small steps. That can actually be the toughest part sometimes. So I get it, that in and of itself takes some practice. Familiarizing yourself with the idea of I can try something and not go all in, not do the whole thing. Just be okay with the imperfection of it, the incompleteness of it. Maybe that could be a good New Year's resolution as well. Then step 3, and this is an important one and often overlooked, and that's plan for days that you're just not able to sustain whatever you're trying to do, even if it is very small. Because if your plan only works on good days, that's not a real plan. So try to think of some strategies of, okay, if I come home, it's late, I told myself I wouldn't order junk food and all of this, have some contingency plans in place that you can draw on for those moments. Maybe have some frozen but semi-healthy food in the freezer, have some alternative options on Uber Eats, have a light exercise that you can do before bed or right before your meal arrives. Have something that still allows you to tap into your goal that day. And of course, if you miss a day, if there is a moment of weakness, we all have that. We can't sustain these things even if on a tiny scale consistently, that's okay. The idea is not to get discouraged, but to come back to it the next day, because that's the beauty of all of this. There's always tomorrow. That leads me to my final tip, and that is replace judgment with curiosity. When the change doesn't stick, the question shouldn't be, oh, what's wrong with me? Why do I always fail? Why is this hopeless? That's not going to get you anywhere. Instead, reframe it with some curiosity. Always approach things with curiosity. Look at it in the way of, okay, it didn't work out this time. I totally skipped a whole week of the gym, didn't read for 2 weeks. That's okay. Bring in some curiosity and reframe it as, okay, that didn't work out, obviously. That was a bad week, but it's behind me now. I have so many weeks ahead of me. Let's focus on how can I plan a little bit better? What are some things that worked? What are some things that didn't work? How can I approach this in a way that maybe allows for more opportunity, more consistency in the future? Be as curious and non-judgmental about it as you can. Even journal about it. I think that can be a very, very helpful thing. Or sometimes I've even had one friend who was able to sustain some changes because she started to tell her friends, her family that she trusted about some of the changes she was looking to make. And when she failed, when she struggled, she was able to bring it up to them. And that offered a layer of, one, accountability, but two, also an ability to problem solve with other people to figure out, okay, this didn't work. What do you think would have worked in this situation? And not place a degree of blame, because oftentimes when we keep these resolutions to ourselves and we fail, all of that blame is shifted towards us. But oftentimes when someone else knows, they'll be the first one to not blame us, right? Not reproach us, but okay, well, let's figure out how can we do this better in the future. And I think that can be a useful tool as well, having that accountability from someone else, or even if you don't have someone else to have you stay accountable, a journal is just fine. Putting it on paper, putting your thoughts, your plans on paper, what worked, what didn't work, what are some goals, what are some of these values that you can write down and continue to come back to as your main source of direction. So in conclusion, my friends, this year, instead of resolutions, focus on what direction you want to take your life in. What are some things you want to implement more of that allow for you to live a life that's more in line with your values? Definitely spend some time clarifying what those values are. And that can take a little bit of thought, a little bit of journaling, and they can shift with time too. But try to get a good sense of what are those things? What do you want to prioritize in your life? So direction over discipline, values over rules, and most importantly, consistency over intensity every time. Because you don't need a personality transplant. You don't need more willpower. All you need is a little bit more compassion towards yourself, a smarter relationship with change. I hope that was helpful. I hope that allows you to create some meaningful change in this new year. And of course, Happy New Year, and I'll see you next week.